Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wattier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott, and I am here with my friend and colleague, as always, Tommy Welling. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Scott. How's it going?
Awesome, man. I'm loving this new record time of late on Tuesday. Thought last week's episode was awesome. A lot of great feedback. How about you? Yeah,
we're getting some good feedback, and we appreciate all the positive comments, suggestions, support along the way. Having a lot of fun and getting a lot of people fired up right now.
I love it, man, especially with that challenge coming up. So last episode, we talked about the official launch date for the 2020 Vision Challenge, which is going to be 7 days of guided fasting with us. So that's February 15th. That's the day after Valentine's Day. It's going to run through the 22nd. Last week, we also talked about diabetes, some of the research related to that, some of the organizations, two of the largest organizations out there in terms of, getting and having a plethora of diabetes information, the pros and cons to go along with that also. And then we talked about the do's and don'ts of your first 24-hour fast, or if you are starting intermittent fasting for the first time, the things you want to do and not to do during your first endeavor.
I think you gave a few good examples too of things not to do, didn't you?
Yeah. Don't eat what I ate. So
good advice.
Yeah, and you're the one who gave it to me, and I still didn't listen. So,
hey.
Lesson learned. Recap today's episode. Just what we're going to be going over today is some more information about the challenge, and we're going to go over a couple of testimonials and some real life things that have happened since last recording. And then we're going to talk about fasting from the year 1910.
A little bit of history.
Yeah, right. And how amazingly relatable and unbelievably similar it is to the same conversations that you and I are having with people, with each other on a day-to-day basis.
It's like society's broken record. Stay tuned.
I text you and was like, did we write this? Like it was unbelievable. The verbiage and it's just crazy. So we're going to get into that now. I don't want to give too much away. So sorry, I'm excited.
Me too. Let's do it.
Cool. So the research, the book itself is called Fasting. I just lost the title, Tommy. The Fasting Cure. There it is.
The Fasting Cure by Upton Sinclair.
What is it? So when I said that to you the other day, I don't remember what you said in terms of your reaction, but it seemed to be one of surprise.
Yeah. So I recognized the author back from sitting in, junior high history class, and we talked about the jungle. So a lot of you guys might remember hearing about that. That was Upton Sinclair. He spent a few weeks in the Chicago, I believe it was, the meatpacking industry. And then he wrote this huge expose, became a best-selling novel. It kind of blew the lid off of the meat packing industry and all the inequities in the sanitation, in meat packing, and a lot of the food distribution back from the turn of the century was, it's given the credit for the 1906 federal regulations on meat packing standards now, which turns out wasn't exactly his point, but Upton Sinclair has written, I think, 100 or more, different works, kind of blowing the lids off of different things, around the turn of the century. So I had no idea that he wrote this book, and we started going through it, just seeing so many things that we've talked about over the last year, or things that we picked up on our own, little nuggets here or there from different sources. But I mean, it was like somebody just took all of our thoughts and wrote them down 110 years ago. It's crazy.
And you asked me, where'd you find this? And I don't know. It just like magically appeared. I don't know where I came across it, but it was in the last 48 hours. And I recognized the name. I said it to my wife. I said, yeah, Upton Sinclair. She goes, why do I know that name? And I said, yeah, I didn't have the recollection that you did or the experience with, the impact that it had when you read it. I don't remember, you said junior high history class.
Mhm.
But I remember the name, and then I, just a quick little Google search, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And yeah, it's just amazing that the conversations and the topics, and even since then, this was in 1910. It was kind of a conglomeration of what he'd been experiencing with writing, articles and just documents and letters, and his experience with it and how he found it, and all these different things. But then, like 40 years later, and now we're talking 110 years later, some of the principles have just been proven over and over and over again, and it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. I mean, he starts off the book and he goes into where it all came from. He originally wrote a piece for Cosmopolitan magazine, probably the same one, Cosmo magazine. These days it was huge back then. It's huge now.
Wow.
Um, and for him and for the magazine itself, they had never had a single article receive so much response from the public. They wrote just dozens and dozens of letters every single day in response to his article. And so his
Didn't they
writing,
ignore it, Tommy? Didn't they ignore a lot of it at one point too? Did I read that and remember that right?
yeah, I think they did from the beginning, and then it got to a certain volume where they couldn't anymore. I mean, they said, well, we have to address this, and he took a personal responsibility for it, um, in such a way that he said, well, I'm writing this book partially out of a selfish need because I don't want to respond to every single letter because
That's
I'm
right.
getting so many questions every single day.
That's
And
right.
so he said about, writing the book, and he had been learning so much through the process, as we all do. I mean, you and I have been, doing this for, 6 to 12 months now. Um, and there's still a learning process to it, which is, it's an evolution. And he found the same thing. And he even went into, hey, I wrote a previous book on nutrition, but even though it has a lot of useful information, it wasn't until he had the personal experience with fasting that he understood how incorrect all those commonly held nutrition beliefs were at the time, which is so much of what we've already said and what we've experienced.
So literally, you can see me now, raising my hand. So this is an audio medium, so this means nothing to the people listening. So I'm just gonna paint the
He's raising
picture
his
for
hand.
you. Yes, thank you. I'm literally sitting here going, yeah, that was me. Thousands of patients over 7 or 8 year career, nutritional consultations, metabolic testing, body composition, blood work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you name it, calorie
Scans,
counting,
lasers.
macro scan, yeah, all this stuff. And it was like, until I started doing it, and then looking at the science and the insulin and all the things that fall in behind, I was like, wow, yeah, this, and the results speak for themselves. It was working. So just amazing that he even looks at like things that were happening 40 years before his realization, which is just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there were other doctors putting forth fasting texts in the late 1800s. I'm not sure about before that. They're probably around too, but as far as well documented, they were there. And so he's referencing texts from 40 years before he's writing this one, saying, "Well, I'm not the inventor of these techniques. I'm just telling you guys about it and what my experience has been, what I've learned." And it's an incredible testimony. And he has just pages and pages of patients and case studies. He's not a physician, but other people who were fasting and detailed accounts of their experience.
You made mention of a quote from the book that is directly, um, kind of a part of my weekly life right now with helping, some of my close friends, some of my long-term patients, some family. And it's one of the same conversations that I keep getting is when, um, they come back to me after a week or two, and they say, yeah, I went to my doctor's appointment, and my insulin went from 46.5 down to 8.
Wow.
And what I say is, that's fantastic. What did your doctor say? And they say, well, they didn't really know what to say. So they said that, I guess, just keep doing what you're doing. Or in certain cases, it's, I'm going to have to release you as a patient because you're not following my guidelines of what we're going to do to manage this condition. Now, we're talking about diabetics in this situation, but insulin resistance is insulin resistance. It's just in diabetics cases, the insulin resistance has gotten to a point where it's much more substantial. So he's talking about the same things that were happening back then with his conversations that are happening in our conversations now.
So, what he says in the book, he says, superfluous nutriment is taken into the system and ferments, and the body is filled with a greater quantity of poison matter than the organs of elimination can handle. The result is the clogging of these organs and the blood vessels, such as the meaning of headaches, rheumatism, arteriosclerosis, paralysis, apoplexy, which is basically stroke, cirrhosis, etc. So everything that we talk about today as far as metabolic syndrome, metabolic diseases, what are those downward spirals, those things that are killing us as a country, as a planet, and killing the healthcare system? What are all these things that we can't seem to reverse, but no one's really prescribing a course of treatment that could actually reverse it?
That's the craziest thing. Like, we have more medicine and more knowledge and more processes and more procedures and more, trials and more information than ever before. Yet the number one comorbidity with, diabetes or syndrome X, or, that pathway of disease over a lifespan, is arteriosclerosis or heart disease. Right. And more people are having this issue, and more people are suffering, and more people are having heart attacks than ever before. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. We've known this for how long? and it hasn't changed.
No, it's the broken record. It's society's broken record. But the thing about it is, what we were talking about before with regard to just human nature, we tend to think that we are the smartest. We have the best technology and the best knowledge of any group of people who was ever alive. So basically, we get into the habit of thinking we have it more figured out than the people before us. But as we can see here, we're talking about the same things over a century ago. That's not always the case.
Yeah, and there's two main things you mentioned there too, like two things about fasting, that people fear, or two dangers, so to speak. And these are, again, conversations that we have with people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, right from in the first few pages of the book, he says there are two dangers to be feared during fasting. He said the first is fear, which we've talked about before.
Right.
He says no one should begin to fast until he has read up on the subject, convinced himself that it is the thing to do, and if possible, he should have someone with him who has already had the experience, a guide, basically. He should not have about him his terrified aunts and cousins who are doom and gloom, Chicken Little, telling him that the sky is falling and that he's wasting away, because he's not.
Right.
He's finally getting healthy, and they don't understand it because they're not experiencing it. They've never done it. They're fearful.
And fear, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But that's why one of the things that we talk about in the outline of kind of how we're delivering this information and what we're trying to do is, mindset and motivation. So is your mind in the right place to do this? And mine was that day that you told me to stop eating. And now, obviously, it wasn't just that direct, instruction. It wasn't like, just stop. It was, okay, this is what I did. This is what you're going to do over the next 2 weeks. And that's what we want to do with the challenge too, is we want to give you a place that's not surrounded by terrified aunts and cousins, but people that are with you of like mind, that are willing to go through the transformation process together. And that's why I was successful, because you were there, kind of lead me along the way.
Yeah, I used several resources. Dr. Fung's book, The
Yep.
Obesity Code, a couple of other books after that. Those were my resource. My person who had already been to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That was that, and then I was that person for you. We're going to be, that person for everyone who's in the challenge. That's the purpose of the challenge.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
then the second fear that he mentioned there was breaking the fast. He goes into exactly what you were talking about on last week's episode about what not to do. Don't just jump in and eat like crazy. Don't eat like you've been fasting for a day or a week or however long it's been. Jump back in slowly. Give yourself a little bit of time to adjust. Take it slow, and then ease back in. You'll feel it. You'll feel your way through it.
And this was one of the, the big things that, you know, he was talking about so many years ago was his schedule, his stress, his work, his food, all of the things that we hear from people today when we do feedback, or we ask people questions, or we have conversations about fasting. And after we get through the initial fear of, oh, you're starving yourself and all those fun comments, once you get through that stuff, you really get down to the root, or the underlying issue at hand, which is people just don't know. Like, they don't know that it's a possibility, and they don't know the benefit. And that's why we talked about benefits on a couple episodes ago. There's so many benefits to it. And one is, just the underlying process of giving your body a break, sometimes. And he didn't do, Sinclair didn't do long fasts. He just did them consistently over a time period. And then he talks about his wife and how she got better. And it's the same thing with the woman who went from a 46.5 to an 8.9, doing one meal a day. She just does one meal a day. She's lost 50 pounds. She's off all her medications. And it was just the consistency over time, undoing the lifestyle, which I can't even fathom was similar back then as it is to now. Like, with all the chaos and inputs and just social media and constant distraction and addiction to our phones and coffee and food and caffeine and just all this stuff. Like, back then it was different stressors, but it was still the same conversation.
Apparently the same brain, the same end result, which is we all get distracted and bored. And in customary habit, if we're in a growing, he was in the middle of the Industrial Revolution there. So
Right.
In a growing economy, access to a lot of food, probably just like we have today.
Which is one of the biggest things, is that families and people were, I'm no historian. That's probably, other than geography and possibly spelling, those are two of my weakest things. But it was that time in the industrial where people were moving away from the distant farm and the family farm into the hubs, and spending a lot of time away from the family and working, and stress, levels were going up, and they're away from their families. And just the abundance was clearly there. So the indulgence began. And especially if you came from money back then, you had the ability to have, cakes and pies and breads, and it was a whole ordeal. Like, you had 7 and 10 course meals. Dinner started at 2. like what? So it's just crazy to see the parallels between the two.
Yeah, it is. It's I don't know. It's unreal how similar it was back then to the way it is today. And you keep going with the book, and you keep feeling like you could read it like it was written today.
Yeah, and just like you mentioned, Dr. Fung earlier, the amazing thing about seeing it from the other side is that he, was treating patients for a couple of decades, and to get our hands on those resources. And I'm not talking about his book, but the 40 pages of research in the back of the book. I thought I was almost done with the book, and I was, because I didn't realize that the back of it was just research after research after research after research. And just picking a few out here and there, the parallels to, again, the same mirror image of what it was back then. So the point of this is to say, there's another way. In simply incorporating fasting into your daily life, you can see immediate changes. I mean, I'm talking like immediate, like within 24 to 48 hours, you will feel different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like if you've ever had a successful eat less, move more kind of drop 500 calories. And then if you stuck with it religiously, I mean, just you were strict, a week or two later, and you said, wow, I'm down 5, 6, 7 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm feeling better. I notice my clothes are fitting looser. I'm breathing easier. I'm sleeping better. That's in a matter of hours to a day or two in a fast, instead of a week or two
Or
in
even
an
longer.
yeah. And many people who are going to be listening are at a point where that week or two isn't doing anything on that eat less, move more, because it's just there's too much insulin resistance over too long of a time. It's no longer effective.
So
But this is.
interestingly, there was a challenge that I know of that was done in the month of January, and it was an abstinence from sugar. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing that was derived from sugar, made from sugar, anything to do with anything that ended in OSE, glucose, fructose, sucrose, any of it.
Okay.
Remove all of it. So all the starchy carbs, all of this stuff. And I was invited to be a part of the group. And I know the docs that run this group, and they are absolutely amazing in the field of functional medicine, hormones, thyroid, really allowing the body to heal from a natural perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There were quite a few people, because you get the notifications, and I was seeing people commenting and saying, well, yeah, I've been no sugar for, it's been 30 days and I've lost no weight and I'm really struggling with my cravings and I've put on 8 pounds. And, there's absolutely a ton of successes. Do not get me wrong. There's a ton of
Mm-hmm.
successes for people removing the processed foods and the sugar from their diet. But there are a lot of people saying the opposite. And they're like, yeah, I quit 2 weeks in because I just wasn't seeing the change. And that's the power of fasting,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not starvation, it's short-term restriction, allowing the body to rebound as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amazing. Like, I didn't believe it, and then after my first 24 hours, I was like, whoa. Like, just
Yeah.
crazy. So
What were you down in this first 24 hours?
of my first ever fast,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're gonna I think you know this. I think you just set me up here. I don't know if everyone else is gonna believe me, but it was over 7 pounds.
Okay. I was down about 6.2
Oh,
in my
okay.
first 24 hours. So
Yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah, you
I
believe
believe you.
me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so 7 pounds
I
now.
almost didn't believe the scale at the time, but I
Right.
believe you.
And water, of course, diuresis, all the flushing out. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. That
yeah.
was not seven
Yeah.
pounds of fat. But
Oh, no.
we'll talk about, that process and phase 2 liver detox and all that stuff, I'm sure, at some point in the future, because you can't keep me away from the research side of things, because I am at heart a nerd.
I would never try that.
Yeah, that's well, you're guilty as well. So where are we taking this and why? It's really, turning this challenge on the 15th is we wanted to do this earlier, just been full transparency. We're like, all right, let's do a challenge. Let's keep people on board. Let's do a challenge. Let's get people on board. We've talked about this for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
everything is coming to a culmination point now where the New Year's resolutions are over. People have failed. They're getting back to just kind of giving in. They're not as strict. They're not as diligent. Now, there are that subset of people out there that are super successful, that on the 95% plan, that they are unbelievably strict. They never miss a calorie or a macro or workout. But for me and for a lot of people, and like yourself, that's not sustainable. So the challenge is going to set you up for immediate success. You're going to have resources and templates, and never mind daily action steps, daily video trainings. There's going to be feedback where we're going to ask you to fill out some surveys and quizzes, and really get to the underlying, why you want to do this. And in 7 days, we should be able to get you to a point, and help you get to the point in terms of mental clarity and decision making to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do from here on out. And in those 7 days, you should see enough results where you're like, okay, just like back in 1910, where he's like, I'm in, this is what I'm doing. That's what we want from you guys too, is to be like, all right, I see it, I understand it, and now I'm ready to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. As far as the accountability goes, if you think about it, accountability is one of those things where when we get started on a track, it's so easy to veer off course. Life comes up, things happen. stuff comes up in the way, especially if you're doing this on your own. Again, we're that person with you, helping you on the other side. So we will help you be accountable every step along the way. And that's what's going to help you see results.
100%. And that support group, it's going to allow you to express concerns. And, one first rule of fasting, if you listen to the earlier episodes, is we don't talk about fasting. And the second rule of fasting is we don't talk about fasting. So
just on the podcast.
Yeah, just on the podcast. If you guys are listening, we talk a lot about fasting. But again, this fits any lifestyle: paleo, low carb, macros, reverse diet, whatever you're doing. Adding fasting in can be a really powerful tool. And we really it's not really about the fasting itself on the 7-day challenge. It's about the process of getting your mind right and getting the perception of what it is that you want to accomplish. And then within those 7 days, seeing that short-term response and being like, wow, I feel different. I see this. This is easier than I expected. Will help you work through all of those, initial fears and things like that. And just be, hopefully, we'll have some, just like you and I have had our personal experiences, but also the people that we've been helping, will have some amazing, results, to the point where, a lot of people ask, well, what can I expect? Well, you can expect better energy, better sleep, better digestion. All these different things are going to happen. And one thing that was mentioned way back, and this is the last thing I'll say, because I don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but from the book, he's like, you can expect a pound a day for a longer extended fast. And I've done a couple of 7 days, and I know that, 7 days, it's about 7 pounds, and there's a little bit of a regain, and it's not about the weight, but the expectation is that you're going to see the change, and boom, it's going to click in your brain and say, okay, I got this. I can do it. So 15th,
you actually get back that you can go and fuel the next step of the journey. And that's so important.
Control, simplicity and control. Those are two things that you said to me very early on that have just stuck with me. So as we wrap up this episode, we are ironing out the final steps. So we got about 10 days before the challenge launches. So how do you guys get engaged? So what we want you to do today, right when you get off this, or as you're listening to me continue to speak, go to Facebook, log in, go to our Facebook page, Fasting for Life, right? Search
The Fasting for Life, yeah.
The Fasting for Life, at The Fasting for Life. I always forget the. But I like how it accentuates everything. So at The Fasting for Life, you'll see our blue and orange logo. Like the page, it's right in the middle of the page. Some of you guys out there are like, okay, Facebook, this is a little foreign to me. Get on Facebook, right in the middle of the page, there's a menu bar, click like, and then that will put you, and there's a little menu next to it to follow. That will give you the notifications of when we drop the link to sign up for the challenge. We haven't dropped it yet, and that's done by design. So when we do drop it, I want everybody to know that they can get it and get in, because there is limited space in the group. And just the feedback that I'm getting from a lot of people is that, everybody's been asking me when this is going to happen since I feel like back in June. But, it's really just been the last 6 weeks. So go to the Facebook page, The Fasting for Life, click like, follow us. That way you get the notification. And then the last thing is go to the website and download the Fast Start Guide.
Yeah, actually, everyone who's gotten the Fast Start Guide, you will be automatically given all the updated links whenever the links drop on Facebook. So get the Fast Start Guide, start your preparation now, and you'll automatically be included on all the next steps for the challenge.
That's a really good point. So I missed a step there. So if you've already downloaded the Fast Start Guide, then you will get the notification of when the challenge link drops. So I just want to be really clear about that. Thank you for that clarification. That is not my strong suit, so I appreciate that. All right, as we wrap this episode up, anything else, Tommy?
No, excited.
Awesome, man. Can't wait. It's 10 days away. So everybody, you know what to do, and we will talk to you next week.
See ya.
Have a good night.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.